Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating study from Stanford University. They've been testing a new, incredibly fast-acting therapy for one of the toughest challenges in mental health, treatment-resistant depression.
All right, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll talk about the problem they're trying to solve. Then we'll get into the specifics of the study design. After that, we'll look at the results. Did it work? Next, we'll explore how it might be working in the brain. And finally, we'll put it all in context and pull out the key takeaways. Let's get started. First up, let's set the stage and talk about the core clinical challenge here, which is something called treatment-resistant depression, or TRD for short. Now, this is a huge deal. We're talking about a form of depression that just doesn't get better, even after trying at least 2 different standard antidepressants. This affects nearly a third of all people with major depression. That leaves a huge number of patients without effective options, which is why finding new interventions is so critically important. So how exactly did the Stanford researchers go about testing their new approach? It's called Stanford Neuromodulation Therapy, or SNT, and they set up a really rigorous study to see if it works. The SNT protocol is what really makes this study stand out. It's both personalized and incredibly accelerated. First, they use a special kind of MRI to find the exact spot in each person's brain to target. Then, they deliver a very high dose of a specific type of stimulation, all in a super condensed time frame. We're talking 10 sessions a day for just 5 days straight. And to test this, they use the gold standard of clinical trials. This diagram shows the patient flow. It was triple-masked, randomized, and sham-controlled. Now, triple-masked means that the participants, the clinicians who rated their symptoms, and the people running the machine all had no idea who was getting the real treatment versus a fake or sham one. It's the best way to avoid any bias. You can see 24 people got the real SNT and 24 got the sham treatment. So with that super rigorous design in place, we get to the million-dollar question. Did the therapy actually work? Let's take a look at the results. The main thing they looked for was remission. That basically means a patient's depression symptoms were almost completely gone, and the results were pretty striking. 4 weeks after the treatment, 50% of the people who got the real SNT were in remission. In the sham group, it was just over 20%, and that difference was statistically significant. They also looked at what they call response, which means someone's symptoms got at least 50% better. And you see a very similar story here. Over 54% of the active group had a response, compared to only 25% in the sham group. Again, a significant difference. Okay, now this graph is where things get really fascinating. It shows the average depression scores over time. The black line is the group that got the real SNT. Look at that. Their scores plummeted right after the 5-day treatment and stayed down for the whole month. The gray line, the sham group, barely changed at all. The speed and the durability of this effect are just remarkable. And, super importantly, was it safe? The answer is a resounding yes. There were no serious adverse events, no negative effects on thinking or memory, and overall, the SNT protocol was extremely well tolerated. So we've established that SNT seems to be both effective and safe. But the Stanford team didn't just stop there. They wanted to dig deeper and ask, how exactly does this therapy change the brain? What's the mechanism? They used EEG to measure brain waves, and they had a really specific hypothesis. Based on other research, they knew that a certain type of brainwave, called beta waves, in the front of the brain, is often elevated in people with depression. So their prediction was that the active SNT would bring those beta waves down. And wow, look at this. They nailed it. These charts show the change in that beta power. You can see that in both an earlier, smaller pilot study and in this bigger trial, the active SNT group showed a significant drop in beta power. The sham group, no change. Seeing this result replicated gives it a ton of credibility. And here's where they tie it all together. This chart connects that change in brain activity directly to how much better the patients felt. Each dot is a patient in the active group. And you can see a really clear pattern. The more a person's beta power went down, the more their depression symptoms improved. This is huge. It shows these brain changes weren't just a random side effect. They seem to be directly linked to their recovery. This leads to another powerful insight, and this might be the most exciting part, a potential biomarker. A biomarker is just something you can measure that tells you about a biological state. And here, the data suggests that patients who started with higher levels of beta power before treatment actually responded the best.
This is a huge hint that someday we might be able to use a brain scan to predict who will benefit most from this therapy before we even start.
Okay, let's zoom out now and put all of this into perspective. What are the big take-home messages here?
So how does SNT stack up against the other heavy hitters for treatment-resistant depression? Well, its 50% remission rate is right up there with the best of them. It's on par with electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, which is often called the gold standard. But here's the kicker. SNT achieves this in just 5 days, and it does so without the cognitive side effects that can come with ECT. That's a potential game changer. So, to sum it all up, this paper really delivers on 3 critical fronts. First, it provides strong, replicated evidence that SNT works for severe TRD. Second, it gives us powerful insight into how it works by identifying that reduction in beta power. And third, it uncovers a potential biomarker that could open the door to truly personalizing this treatment down the road. And that leaves us with this really powerful question for the future. Can you imagine a day where a simple brain scan could tell us exactly who will benefit from a therapy like this? This research really points toward a new era of psychiatric care, one that is targeted, biological, and truly personalized.